public comment. Anyone from the public out there?
No.
Okay. Let me know if someone from the public shows up and we can invite them later if they want to address us. So, all right, approved previous meeting minutes, and I think we have two sets, don't we, to approve? September we put off?
Let me double check.
That was what our current minutes said.
Okay. You're probably right. I'd have to check what's, it's in the October minutes to double check what's in September.
Yeah, it says September 12th meeting minutes tabled to the next meeting, so.
Okay, thanks.
And I don't have a copy of that. I'm not sure who was at that meeting. I know I was. Joe, John, Abby, were you all at that meeting?
Mm-hmm. I think so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. From the September meeting, it was Mike, Abby, Connor, Sarah, and John who were
That was the
present.
September meeting?
Yeah.
Okay. So does someone want to make a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll move.
Okay, Joe, is there a second? Oh, there you guys are.
I'll second. Oh,
John? Okay.
there's the camera.
Any discussion on those minutes? If none, all in favor of approving the September 12th minutes, please say aye or raise your hand or however you want to do it.
Aye.
Okay, looks like no one would be opposed or abstained. How about the minutes of October 10th? And at that meeting, let's see, who was there?
Mike, Sarah, John, Joe, and Brendan.
Yeah. So John, Joe, and myself, I think, were the only ones there that are here tonight.
Mm-hmm.
So Joe or John, do you want to make a motion and second to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Joe?
I'll second.
That leaves it to you, John. Sorry.
Yep. I'll second.
Okay, any discussion about those minutes? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
And I'll make three. No abstentions and no opposition. Okay, we'll move on then. And we've got discussion of ULUDR sections 4.1 and 5.6 related to replacement units. Remy, do you want to take over?
Yeah, so with that, I think to begin the conversation, you'd have to motion to open the hearing.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's right, it's a public hearing.
It's a
isn't it?
public hearing for the Act 181 changes.
Yeah, all right, so I need a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, public hearing is open. Has any members of the public joined us, Reve?
Not that I can see.
Okay, well,
Wait, hold on. Let's see. No, two panelists.
Okay.
There is one member of the public.
Have
Whoops.
any other members of our commission joined us?
Panelists. I meant to not do that.
hello, Mayor.
Okay. I think the person from the public disappeared.
Okay,
It's Brendan.
so,
Musical chairs.
there's no public, Reve, do you want to introduce this or Jasmine?
Introduce it? Yeah, sure. So these were previously discussed at prior meetings, minor changes related to Act 181. Mainly the goal is to align the ULUDR with what is now currently in statute. The three changes are to include in the list of protected uses hotels and motels converted to affordable housing, a minor change to align with statute about public hearing notices, and then the last change being that in the residential districts, residential users can utilize parking off-site to fulfill parking requirements. At this point, I'll turn it over to you for any questions.
Can you run us through, I don't know if you can put it up on the screen or not, can the folks sitting in there see it on a screen?
Yeah. Hold on one sec. Sure. So this is the list of changes to the ULUDR. As mentioned, under Section 510, protected uses for public facilities.
And the hotel motel is it from Act 181, state law?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
The parking requirements, minor change to allow for off-site parking in the residential districts, which is a requirement under Act 181 now.
But that one, as I recall it, we still got within 1,400 feet of the property as measured basically along sidewalk or handicapped access way or.
Yes, the edge of the property, and with a certain limitation of how much can be off-site. So no more than 20% or 10 spaces.
Okay.
And then lastly, that minor change under Article 8D, just removing subsection A. So the public notice would include the entire section of statute.
Okay. And you said that off-site parking was part of this Act 181?
Yes.
Okay. So we have no choice.
Yep. I mean, you don't have to change it, but I can't follow it because statute says the opposite.
Right. That's what we, okay. Does anyone on the commission have any questions, comments, or Christine? I guess not, huh?
Nope. Camera's facing them.
So procedurally, you would, if you want to move forward with this, you would close the hearing and then vote to forward these changes to council to consider.
Yep. I'm thinking, though, that let's hold it open for maybe another till 7 in case someone from the public shows up. So we can, I don't know what the right word is, pause it or recess or whatever, till 7 o'clock and then take it up again. And if no one shows up, we can then take the vote.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it seems procedurally fine. As long as you keep it open, you can keep it open.
Right.
Yeah. Typically, if you, as long as you're within the meeting and you don't vote to close it, then you're fine. Once you close the meeting and you don't close it, then everything kind of closes automatically. So just be mindful of not voting to adjourn and whether you're going to close this public section of public hearing or not.
So I'm going to put the pressure on you, Revy, to make sure that we address this in like half an hour.
It was your idea, though.
You know how forgetful I am. That's why I'm saying. Throwing it on someone else's plate, but I'll remember.
I'm making a note.
All right.
Thanks. I will do my best.
I'm gonna put an alarm on my phone.
Thank you, Brendan.
Thanks.
The only reliable thing.
So I guess we're into the next item. I'm going to get back to the agenda. Public hearing. So you want to move on to discussion of the sections 4.1 and 5.16?
Yeah.
Replacement units?
Yeah, so I can start talking about this. So since our last meeting, Jasmine and I have worked together to rework this considerably. And let's see here. I think I just noticed one thing that I need to highlight and change. So one thing that I need to change is that we would want to change this to apply to only 3-bedroom units and not 2-bedroom units. The policy focus on this and objective was to ensure that 3+ bedroom units are protected. Going over the data of our housing stock, we thought that 2+ bedrooms would be overkill and would be too restrictive on redevelopment of property. So we were keying in on 3+ bedrooms. So I need to make that change under 4.1, 4.1D to reflect that. But those changes are reflected in section 5.16 onward.
Or is that a new?
Yeah, were there other places in the previous section? I remember reading that and saying, there's a conflict here. We're talking about 3-bedroom units in 5.16 and 2-bedroom and more.
Yeah, I need to fix it so it's consistent. 4.1 should be 3 bedrooms.
Okay.
Yeah, that's my
so
mistake.
wherever it says 2 or more.
Yeah.
you change 3.
Yeah.
3 or more.
Yes.
Okay.
So under 5.16, just identifying the changes under A and B, that's refocused to 3+ bedrooms. The other changes are the, let's see, contribution to the Housing Trust Fund. We're still considering an in-lieu fee option, but that in-lieu fee is not written into the ULUDR, because typically fees are included in the fee section of our ordinance, of our book of ordinances. So that in-lieu fee option will be included with the other fees, such as zoning fees or development review board fees.
And are
that's how it
those
works.
fees set by the council?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Other modifications under that were which types of developments can qualify. I think this is kind of a carryover from the previous iteration where parcels with less than 10 dwelling units with 3 or more bedrooms, which I don't think there are any, or projects, well, actually, no, there are those, but projects with more than 10. So projects with less than 10 can pay into the Housing Trust Fund to fulfill this requirement. Parcels with 10 or more existing dwelling units with 3 or more bedrooms, which I don't think there are any.
You never know.
Only 50% of those units can pay into the Housing Trust Fund to meet the requirements of this section.
So just for clarification, if I could, for E1, we're talking about just the 3-bedroom units. So if I have a 9-unit apartment house with 2 3-bedroom units, it would apply to just the 2 3-bedroom units, not the all 9 units, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And same with if I have a 15-unit and I've got 5 3-bedrooms, it would only apply to the 5, not the 7 or 8, the 50%?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why are we choosing to forego 2-bedroom?
So looking at the implementation and the rollout of this, we've identified a number of properties that have a lot of 2-bedroom units. And so with those properties, any restriction like this would be overly burdensome to those properties for future redevelopment. Kind of going through the math and the hypotheticals during the last meeting in which there's a particular property in the city that has 24 2-bedroom units. And so playing this out, we thought it wise to open up the flexibility of that for those properties that do have multiple 2-bedroom units, because we would want to encourage an updating of our housing stock in the long term. And we wouldn't want our housing stock to become derelict over time just because they felt that these regulations were overly burdensome because they have, too many 2-bedroom units. Alongside this, the policy focus from council and our terms of our housing stock needs, I think you can talk more about this, has been affordable 3-bedroom units. So in order to key in on that particular objective, we shifted over to 3 bedrooms rather than 2 bedrooms.
Yeah, I think for that property too, in like particular, if it was mandated to, or required that 24 2-bedrooms be built, or you pay, $100,000 per unit in lieu, which actually they wouldn't be eligible for that anyway. So that would sink any project. There's a project that is proposed right now. I imagine that they probably won't meet the terms of their permit and will probably have to reapply. That would sink any project on that property, which we don't want. Yeah, we want people to build larger unit bedrooms, but we don't want to make a parcel like completely undevelopable, because that could also impact like the property value if like it's known that that those units that are there will have to be replaced. Then no one is going to want to develop on the property if they have to build 24 2-bedroom units. And then just in terms of like the 2 versus 3-bedroom units, so the 3+ bedroom units mostly has been identified as a need by like our larger new American families, our immigrant and refugee families who live in the city and are really struggling to find housing that's appropriate for their family sizes. And, to be honest, that goes a lot further than just, 3-bedroom is kind of mostly what we reference in terms of like the development of, new rental units being developed. 4 or 5, honestly, is unrealistic and probably will never happen unless it's a specific development.
Understood.
2-bedroom units do happen. Like 2-bedroom units are developed naturally by market forces. Like they exist. They're fairly common.
That's kind of my question then, because if that's likely to sink a project that they would have to replace 2 bedrooms, that means they're not getting built then.
Yeah. Well, they are, but not at that scale. Like,
because I guess my concern would be like, is it good that like you get 1 3-bedroom unit but you lose say 6 2-bedrooms, like, and you've got a bunch of studios along with like 1 3-bedroom?
I specifically think that our housing needs are so specific for the population who lives in Winooski, and generally for the most part, family sizes in Vermont are shrinking. Most people in Vermont are overhoused. They have, homes that are 6-bedroom units and it's a single elderly person. Like, for the most part, we should be...
Right, but I'm talking about 2 bedrooms here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so wouldn't there be like still demand for that?
I mean, if there is, I think that market rate developers will build it, but I don't think mandating that they build 24 is sustainable or going to be productive in trying to encourage development. I think that our priority has been 3+ bedroom units for large families. 2-bedroom units is kind of a different type of unit and a different type of person that probably will be renting that. And I don't think that we need to be overly restrictive for that, because I think the last version of the replacement regulations that I took a look at, I kind of had like a red flashing light in my head of like, this is very restrictive and potentially would be significantly more restrictive than how the inclusionary zoning regulations are written. And I feel like that's more traditionally something that people advocate against, requiring affordable units. And I think for the most part, replacement unit ordinances are generally just kind of like a CYA, like just to ensure that housing doesn't become commercial space exclusively. Like that's what Burlington's is essentially just saying you can't remove housing, but it doesn't dictate bedroom size or anything. And I think what we're shooting for here is something new and different, which makes sense because we have very different housing needs than the average Vermont community. But I think being overly restrictive will only have negative outcomes in terms of like our development outcomes.
From my time on the commission, I never thought that us going forward with a replacement housing ordinance was because of the threat of commercial space taking over. I guess I'm a little bit confused about this because, say for instance, you're removing any number of 2-bedroom housing units. Say there was never a 3-bedroom unit involved at all, but you've lost, 6, 8 2-bedroom units to be completely replaced with studios. I mean, you could potentially have a family living in 2-bedroom units versus like, it's very unlikely you're gonna see a family living in a studio.
It's like the 300 Main Street project, right? Those were all 2 bedrooms, but lots of families.
Yeah, I guess that's why I'm not understanding why we wouldn't include.
What if there's like a limit to how many 2-bedrooms? As you were saying, the 24 2-bedrooms, that's restrictive. But if it's up to 5 2-bedrooms on a property or I don't know what the number is, but that it is applicable to 2 bedrooms up to a certain amount or something. I think that's kind of,
Right.
it still is relevant to 2 bedrooms, but not trying to be like 24 need to be replaced.
I think what we're getting at is that we're trying to put in regulations because there is a market gap and that there is a market need that the market isn't building. The market is building 2-bedroom units, not at the scale of like 24 units anymore, but they are building 2-bedroom units at a slower pace than before probably. But they're not building 3-bedroom units, which are direly needed.
Totally understood.
And
Totally
so,
understood. Yes.
and so to plug that market gap is the reason why we're focusing on the 3-bedroom, affordable 3-bedroom units. And so it's kind of like we might be overstepping by saying you should be building 2-bedroom units when there isn't really a demand for that scale and that much 2-bedroom units. So I think it's like the fine line of our role to figure out how do we make sure that the community's needs and interests are met, but also keeping in mind of how do we ensure that there is housing growth happening according to the market, because the market does determine the housing demand that's needed within the city.
Yeah, I agree. I think, not letting perfection be the enemy of good. It would be amazing to regulate everything and have like a city in the blueprint of like every single one of our needs and desires, but that would be so overly restrictive, nothing will ever get built. So I think that we are looking for that market gap and our specific like tangible need. And while, yes, not every single type of housing that we think is needed in the city might get built, but I think if we cast our net too wide, then it's going to be overly restrictive and have negative outcomes.
Right. However, what I'm hearing at the same time is, of course, the developers are going to build 2-bedroom units, but then, we can't mandate that because that would be onerous. Like, it seems to be a bit of a double standard there.
It's more of, I guess, right-sizing the onerousness.
Because, I guess what I'm saying is, I know that it is really a long shot in our era to make family size 3-bedroom. I'm thinking if we even got replacement 2-bedroom, that seems like a win for the city. And you could have a single parent and a child living there versus the likelihood of this, we get a lot of studios being built.
Yeah.
If you want to talk about the data, from the general data that we've been seeing with bedroom counts and housing stock, we've seen a loss generally of these 3+ bedroom units. We haven't seen a drastic loss in the 2-bedroom units. So it's more of a correction to that we're pushing towards, because we know that there is that gap that's not being covered, that is being lost compared to the 2-bedroom units, which has remained consistent over time based on the data that we've seen.
Yeah, and I will say I did speak with a developer recently who has multiple buildings, and they are struggling to rent their 2-bedroom units. He said that they're rented at market right now, $2,500, which for a new apartment 2-bedroom is fairly standard. Like 2,000 is 80%, so that's pretty close to 100% AMI. And he's saying that they have had vacancies for the first time in 5 years. And that they are not seeing a lot of movement for the large market rate units because they're too expensive. Most people will want to stay in a smaller unit while they're renting before transitioning to a larger place when they ultimately, hope to buy. I'm in that similar position where I would not want to rent a larger, more expensive unit. I just would rather wait and then hopefully try to buy someday. So I think that we shouldn't be mandating every single part of the market, and that the market is going to build what's profitable for them and what is successful for them, because that's what they do, that's their job. But I do think that we have a very specific need with the 3+ affordable bedrooms, not just 3+ bedrooms, 3+ affordable bedrooms for our new American communities. And I think that's where we intervene. Otherwise, it's overly regulatory, especially, considering we're also considering inclusionary zoning regulations.
Yep.
So Revy, if I can, so what you're suggesting is when we first were talking about this, we were talking about replacing if someone's going to tear down a building, replacing it with the same number of bedrooms. We're getting away from that now, it sounds like, and just concentrating on the 3 bedrooms. So taking that 24 unit, 2-bedroom, 24 2-bedroom project, as an example, the way these regs are written, they could put 24 1-bedroom or studios?
Yes, so we're not, so in that particular example, these regulations would not apply.
Gotcha.
So I guess what I'm getting at here is though, again, you could have, a number of buildings that there was never a 3-bedroom unit, but had a number of 2-bedroom units. All those buildings were demolished, and you have a building with, say, 20 studios in place. And I don't see how that fosters like having just, we've not made anything that was family sized in that process, and like even small family sized. So I guess that's why I'm a little bit uncomfortable about moving away from, and if developers are going to be building these, I don't see why it can't be built into it.
It's,
Because I think we don't know what the developers, we know what the community needs, but we don't know what the market rate housing market needs. The developers know, the people who run the buildings, they know if we need more 2+ market, market rental units, then they will build that. But us saying they have to, if one of the developers is telling me that they have vacancies for the first time in forever, and then they are required to build a bunch of 2-bedroom units that are $2,500, and for whatever reason, families would rather rent, a single family home that's bigger, or try to buy, or stay in a smaller unit that's cheaper, or an older unit that's not brand new, then we don't want to require housing to be built that is not sustainable in our market, because then it's a waste, it's just sitting empty potentially, and that's not what we need.
yeah.
I agree that, studios and 1-bedrooms are not necessarily going to be building for our school, but I also think that by over-regulating, we run the risk of having no development, which also, goes against that same goal.
Mhm. Yeah, we're in this kind of interesting position of like thinking idealistically of like how we want to, what kind of units diversity that we want, while also working with developers on making sure that they're making their ends meet too and providing the needs of the community. So trying to compromise both is always a challenge, right? And I think that's what we were trying to do, understanding that we know that there is a market need for 2-bedrooms that is actually getting built up, possibly not at the same rate as before, but it's still there, and we're not seeing that loss over time, versus this gap in the market at 3+ bedrooms that isn't being built out, especially the affordable 3+ bedrooms. So the balancing both sides is challenging, but it's trying to figure out how to, work with the developer community too, to ensure that all of the needs are met is what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I'm certainly not the first person that would be like anti-regulating. I am generally like a strong advocate for that. But I think in this case, like we thought about it in the context of bringing this to the developer roundtable, and I thought, I just know that this is not gonna work. Like this is much too restrictive, and that, they are key to this housing crisis. We need them to build housing. So, yeah.
Now you know why I'm quiet, Jasmine. I'm in shock from your change of position here.
I mean, I think you have to think about it in the lens of combining it with inclusionary as well.
I'm just kidding. I hope you know that.
So Mike, just to make you aware, Mayor Lott put in a couple notes in the chat, so I'll defer to you on all the running the meeting, but just wanted to let you know about that.
I saw it, but Mayor, you can jump right in here.
There was active discussion. I just was sharing a document that was shared at a January council meeting that includes what has been developed in the gateways since the adoption of form-based code, and it breaks it out by unit type. One of the projects that's listed there, that's highlighted, that was permitted but hasn't been developed yet. So I was trying to do a quick recalculation of the numbers, because the percentages aren't they might not be the same without that one project.
Can someone either read
So without that
them
project,
or
it's something lower,
can you
maybe
pull it
20
on
or
the screen
25%.
so we can see?
I don't know what we're talking about
Oh, there's a link in the,
Yeah, we can't see the
Yeah,
chat.
not everyone's in the chat, so hold on.
I think this document Eric made months ago and was
Yeah.
shared with you guys initially. I think it's a memo.
Yeah, it was shared back in January.
Yes, when we started this all.
Yeah, I'm gonna share it right now. There we go. Is there like a nice table in here?
Yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah, this one. Yeah, yeah.
Which one is the one, is it the 138 East Allen is not yet built?
yeah, that was only permitted. So I'm trying to do a quick,
Yeah, that's the big behemoth.
Mhm.
So that's.
yeah, which would impact all of the totals.
Yeah, so instead of 38 units, it's 29. I guess I'm trying to figure out the table because under 138, 166 East Allen Street for one bedrooms, it says 48 and 87, but there's only 9 units. Oh, that was a previous number, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so
Okay,
it's.
186 is proposed, okay.
Yeah, so I think look more towards the right side of the table on the units potentially coming in, or the units that have already come in, and that unit mix.
I will note the 36 Mallets Bay Avenue is Butternut Grove, so all 20 of the 3-bedroom units that got built were all shared equity, affordable CHT development. So if you remove that, then it's 3.
And it's 3, yeah. And there's only 3 developments that have 2 bedrooms in them.
But, yeah.
So it's primarily studio 1-bedroom.
And the chart doesn't show again, as far as like the inclusionary zoning, I'm not seeing the number of bedrooms per unit previously versus.
I think that they didn't all have clear, Eric
Right.
went through the files and was struggling to find consistent information pre-development or pre-redevelopment.
I think roughly, Christine, that would equate to about 20%. I mean, really rough numbers.
It's 20, I just remapped it.
Yeah.
And I will say one of those developments with the 2 bedrooms is that is the person that indicated that they have vacancies for many of the 2 bedrooms. Actually, both.
I think if we are gonna just stick with 3 bedrooms for this, that we make sure we're not providing too many loopholes on how to get out of building the 3 bedrooms. So if we're really focused on the 3 bedrooms and that's the priority housing, not to have a bunch of outs.
So that's the next part.
My alarm to close the public hearing on the prior topic went off.
Thanks, Brendan. The attorney speaks up.
There is an attendee now, Mike.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, let's finish this and then we'll go back to the public hearing.
Are you sure? Because we're just getting started with this, Mike.
What's that?
We're just getting started with this section. Are you sure you want to wait to close it?
I think so. I mean, well, all right, let's go back to the public hearing and ask the person from the public if they have any comments on the topic that we were discussing. Public hearing, which was Articles 4.12 and 5.10.
Got nothing on my end.
Remy, can you ask the
They
person
they
if
left.
they want to comment on anything?
You stressed them out, Mike.
We did kind of put them on the spot.
Yeah.
All right, well then
All right,
let's
let's close
I'm
it
sorry,
then.
what did I do?
close
I'm
it and
sorry.
vote, and then we'll have it done.
Yeah.
So what would the motion be?
It would be a motion to close first.
Okay, I'll move to close the public hearing.
Okay, is there a second?
I can second that.
Second, John, okay.
Just keep saying.
Any discussion? If not, all those in favor of closing the public hearing, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
All right.
Okay, that's everyone, so there's no opposition. Now, I need a motion to forward the proposed amendments to the city council. Did I?
Yep.
Am I right? Yeah.
Yes.
Someone want to make that motion to
So moved.
move the amendments to the city council for their consideration?
Abby motioned.
Okay,
I'll second.
sound like Brendan. Any discussion? Not all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? Okay. All right, I can forget about remembering to close the public hearing then, and we can go back to where we were.
Okay, and yeah, Abby's point was, if we're sticking to only replacement requirement for 3+ bedrooms, we want to make it tight. So I think, what's next, payment in lieu?
So there's payment in lieu, and then also how the applicant can meet the requirements. And so this is the next part. And so under G, so under F and G, applicants can either replace them 1-to-1 with the same number of bedrooms, or they can provide affordable housing replacements. So with the affordable housing replacements, applicants can pool together the number of bedrooms and units to be demolished and redistribute them to be replaced in an affordable housing unit, as long as the replacement dwelling units each have at least 2 bedrooms. These affordable housing units would be priced accordingly at 80% for rental, 120% for sale, and to each bedroom being removed, if it's being replaced as affordable, would count as 2 bedrooms. So what that would mean is that if there are 2 3-bedroom units being removed, an applicant can choose to pay in lieu, replace the 2 3-bedroom units as for sale, for rent, however, or replace the 2 3-bedroom units as one affordable 3-bedroom unit. They could also meet this requirement with, I think the example I have here is like replace 4 3-bedroom units with 2 affordable 3-bedroom units, or 3 affordable 2-bedroom units, providing some flexibility with the affordable units. But the idea being that that with the affordable units, there has to be some sort of offset.
And so you're not concerned in that with replacing those 3-bedroom units with, I guess it's the priority housing, which are 3+ bedrooms, affordable units?
At least I didn't think so, unless you had any comments about replacing the 3-bedroom units with potential 2-bedroom affordable units.
No. I think that market rate 3-bedroom units are not necessarily needed in this market. I think if landlords are struggling to rent market rate 2-bedroom units at $2,500, which is the Allen Brooks like central tendency for rent, which is fairly close to what most of our market rate new rentals are being rented at. That a market rate 3-bedroom unit would be going for at least $3,000, which would be very high. And like I've said, for kind of our priority housing population that we are trying to target with the 3-bedroom units, the 3+ bedroom units, that is not something generally that, for example, a refugee family would be able to afford. So in my opinion, we've kind of talked about the 3 priority housing buckets as, affordable housing, 3+ bedrooms, and homes built for sale. And we've never really discussed like how they intersect with each other. And it's kind of mine and Revi's professional opinion that we, 3+ bedroom units on their own are not an express need of our community. It's specifically affordable 3+ bedroom units that are needed. So yes, I would rather see affordable 2-bedroom units, ideally affordable 3-bedroom units, built than larger market rate units, because I don't think that the market necessarily is asking for those, nor does it really need those. So yeah, I think part of this is like offering flexibility to developers a little bit, since every project is different, and so many of them are struggling to make kind of any project pencil out at all.
To that point, however, we haven't really seen any 3-bedroom units being built at market rate, so how would we know what the desirability of them are?
Because they're struggling to rent 2-bedroom units because they're too expensive. And a 3-bedroom unit would need, in order for them to
Right.
make money, they would need to make rent for that be more than the $2,500. So it's
Understood.
very unlikely that that is needed.
Understood.
And for the most part, like Vermont, family size is shrinking. And like I said, many people are overhoused. In, general statewide trend, we're trying to look towards smaller units, more density. Obviously, our population is like at odds with that, which makes all of this so much more difficult when developers, that's what the market's calling for, is studios and ones, but that's not what, our new American families need and the families at the school. So I think that's why giving some give and take of like, you can do less if you do specifically what we need, because that's so hard to achieve that, reducing the requirement by half potentially will give someone the opportunity to be able to do that and have it pencil out. Otherwise, if it's not like strong enough of an incentive or a reduction for the affordable 3-bedroom unit, then I just think we will continue to not see those, which, isn't what we want at this point.
But it seems like, the bucket that you've been talking about is the affordable 3-bedroom, and this basically gives an out for putting out affordable 3-bedroom units.
Well, if you want to build double the.
Yeah. So it's yes and no, I guess. Yes, it does provide it provides an out, but what we're looking at it as providing flexibility in a market gap, because we're just not seeing enough affordable units in general. So, and affordable units are harder to pencil out with the mix with market rate. So we're trying to provide more flexibility and cover a larger part of the market gap that's direly needed and just not being seen in future developments.
I'm struggling with this because I'm hearing about smaller families, and that would equate to these 2 bedrooms being occupied then, if we're trending towards smaller families that don't need 3 bedrooms. Because like my best friend, her family for many years lived in a 2-bedroom unit here in Winooski that wouldn't live in a single bedroom unit.
But this is also, we're talking about newly built rental.
This was new construction on East Street. It was relatively new construction.
Yeah, I don't know. I live in a 2-bedroom. Like, I understand. I'm not saying that it's not needed in the market. I'm just reflecting what I have been told by developers who operate the 2-bedroom market units.
Yeah. From what I've seen from other places, it's not that they're not being built, and I think it's shown in that table too. It's just not being built at the rate that we've seen in the past. So there's a lower anticipated demand from the developer side to provide those. It's not that they're not being built, it's just that they're being built at a much lower rate for the market side. But versus the 3-bedroom units, they're just not penciling out, and there's also some like building code aspects that I'm at least thinking about a lot. But for those 3-bedroom units, to make them more feasible and of the size that families want and need. So yes.
Ultimately what I'm saying though is I don't feel that we would not be including 2-bedroom if we didn't in fact know that we would be losing them. Because that will be lost in the project. Like if that makes it onerous going forward, they will not include them in the new structure. So say you lost 6 two-bedroom units, and they're not gonna build any of those in the new whatever 10-plus building, we know that's being lost.
Yeah, and again, it's that fine line, right? Of, I think, because we're hearing from developers and landlords that they're just not able to rent out all the two-bedroom units that they're building out, even though there might be some demand for them. It's not all demand for all of the units that are being put online. So it's trying to find that fine line of how can we work with developers to meet the interests of the community as a whole.
Right.
Right?
And how, with what frequency are we hearing that 2 bedrooms aren't being rented? Like, is it from one developer, or is it multiple developers? Is it a lot of units we're talking about that are unrented?
Like an
Well, we can
intergen-
ask next week, we can ask the developers next week.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, we're having the housing roundtable next week that we'll all be at. It's a joint meeting with the Housing Commission. We can get more information from
This has taken a
the
different
developers
trajectory.
at that meeting to answer some of these questions. From their standpoint, I should add.
I think what I want to make sure like is conveyed to both of you is that this commission, we're 2 bedrooms can work, right, for a family of 4, right?
That's I understand that, yes.
There's no, and I'm basically agreeing with
Yeah.
you that there's like I think we are maybe more sensitive to losing 2 bedrooms than you all are, because I think like a 1 bedroom doesn't work for a family, but like a 2 bedroom can.
Yeah.
You know?
I think that's been the challenge for us writing these regulations too, is that 2 bedrooms can work for some families. It's kind of like trying to, I know I said this before, but it's like trying to figure out, like, idealistically, like, this will work and this can provide a service for people, versus what can actually be built tomorrow by someone, and whether those costs actually pencil out. And so it's been this balance game of like idealism and practicality that we've been trying to tease out.
And my argument here is I don't think it's overly idealistic to include in new construction what we're losing at its core. You follow what I'm saying? If we're building newer, denser buildings, why can't we have that like incorporated into a...
Like South Burlington is a bunch of 2-bedroom, like big apartment units.
Like these
and-
larger buildings that do have a mix of housing to serve the different needs, rather than
Right, the
forcing
mix
through a
of things.
3-bedroom and then having a whole lot of 1 or studio.
So with
Yeah.
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I don't think that we know the market better than the people who, that's their entire job, is to serve the market. That's how they make their money, that's how they made their livelihood. Like, for market rate housing, I don't think that any of us know better than like the housing developers. I don't agree on kind of the more social services side of things, like the average developer doesn't understand, or, maybe they understand, but they wouldn't necessarily think that we need affordable 3+ bedroom. That's a specific like niche housing type that the city has to advocate for, and in this case a lot of the times intervene and insert that in our zoning regulations wherever possible, provide incentives. For like traditional market rate units, I don't think that we need to be overly regulatory and insert ourselves in a business that essentially is based on the market.
Well, I thought that's the whole reason why we're discussing inclusionary zoning in the first place, is that the market does leave these gaps that like, that's why we're...
Yes, but for the priority housing type.
I guess I was, that 2-bedroom was also considered family sized as well, but I maybe misunderstood that.
I think council has, correct me if I'm wrong, Christine, I think it has been 3+ bedroom has been the language from council.
Yeah, that's what the focus has been on.
I guess one thing I'm thinking about too is like, how, if at all, does this play into housing for sale? Because I sort of see what you're saying about, okay, there's not a lot of demand for like market rate 3+ bedroom rentals. But like, to the extent that there's new housing for sale being built, I think there probably would be like some demand for market rate 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom houses, but like those don't seem to really be being built as much. And so I guess like, to what extent is that like considered in this?
That's a whole other
That is-
For a
that
section
is
of-
why we see these young families leave Winooski.
Right.
Right.
Exactly, they
Yeah, I mean,
outgrow
we-
the size of it.
My house, on the Fountain Street in the new development is 2 bedrooms, and we currently have 1 child, right? If we have another one, it becomes a lot harder to like stay. And it seems to be sort of a dearth to me of like bigger houses in the city.
Yeah, I mean, with that part of it, with the for sale market, I think that's like a whole other piece that it's not that we haven't been focusing on. It's like it's a whole other complex machinery
Yeah,
mechanism
well,
that
Homes built for sale is just much less common.
yeah.
I think Gabe Handy is coming on Tuesday, and he is really one of the only developers
Yeah.
who has built that in Winooski recently.
Mhm.
And Amy's coming from CHT, and obviously they do the shared equity, which is a bit different because there's a lot of federal subsidy involved with that. But for the most part, owner occupied or, homes that have been sold are going to be 3+ bedroom. Like you look at our housing stock, and we actually have quite a lot of 3+ bedrooms, but when you look at the public building registry, aka any public building that's rented, versus like total housing stock, that's like a very different number. Of course there's, smaller duplexes and things like that. But for the most part, like homes built for sale market is going to be, 3+ bedroom generally, because like you said, it's usually families that want to move on from the smaller rental units. But I mean, I don't think that small like condos aren't needed either, because that offers like a more affordable
Right.
home ownership option for people.
Yeah.
And trying to move a little bit away from the single family home design of the layout, which we need to do if more people are going to have the opportunity to own homes, specifically like starter homes or homes for people to age in place. I think, but I think Gabe will be helpful.
Yeah, I think so too.
Because,
Yeah.
even speaking with other municipalities, it's the same thing with inclusionary. It's just the homes built for sale are so far and few between that there's just a lot less data on it than rental units.
Well, is there anything we can do about that? I mean, the Barlow redevelopment will have lots of opportunity to have a diversity of housing, and sort of, we know if we look at our complete housing picture, we have lots of small units, we have lots of affordable units relative, and we have a dearth of 3+ bedroom, a dearth of home ownership. Is there anything we can proactively do? Like, I feel like we're trying to tackle the 3+ bedroom and we're trying to tackle affordability, but we're not really tackling ownership. And we have, like, between the Barlow redevelopment and the Armory, like 2 fairly large plots coming online that could be possible opportunities to expand our home ownership buildings in the city. So just sort of pointing that out, that we keep talking about these 3 priority housing things, and I feel like we're only working on 2.
Yeah.
And then my follow-up is, like, we have overlay, we're dealing with the overlay to cover affordable units, right? Like, the intention of this, of replacement housing, was really retaining family-size homes. And I feel like we're kind of watering down that in a way that when somebody demos a 3+ bedroom, they don't have to rebuild it, which was the original intention of the replacement housing policy. And then the overlay districts would cover the affordable housing needs. And so right now, the way it's written, you can basically build affordable and not build 3+ bedroom housing or family size housing, which was not the original intention of the replacement housing policy.
Yeah, I guess the way I'm thinking about it is that my sort of perception was that the inclusionary zoning framework kind of deals with affordable housing, and then this replacement ordinance was about literally the number of bedrooms and how big they are, irrespective of affordability.
I think we don't necessarily think those should be separate. It's hard because they are kind of how they are written are separate, but we don't believe that it is necessarily should be a targeted priority of the city to encourage market rate 3+ bedrooms which is why the overlap between those affordable and the larger bedroom units is necessary. But it sounds like, I mean, maybe we just cross off the 2-bedroom.
And my concern is you
Yeah,
not, don't
I think-
get the 3-bedroom units. Because if they were never there to begin with, but you're losing the 2-bedroom units too.
Mhm.
Or, I mean, maybe it's, you've got to replace some percentage. Okay, so if it's 20, you've got a building with 24 2-bedroom units. Okay, you don't got to replace all of it. Maybe you need to replace 25% or a third or something. And I'm not in a position to come up with a number that's best right now. I think we should still have something for placement of 2 bedrooms, some number. So, I think, that's my position.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have a better conversation with the developers on that. And I think that we'll probably dig through the data a little bit more about that, because I think one of our fears with this, as we mentioned, is creating an artificial glut in the market, and creating units that aren't being rented out and that aren't being able to pencil out. So it's, with that 2-bedroom unit, it's like, because we know they're being built, it's just not being built at the same rate. So it's I guess for us is again like right sizing it.
Mm-hmm.
That's required, and maybe that is only a small portion that gets built into future developments.
Right.
But again, it's like trying to right size it to the point that we're not creating this artificial glut.
I guess what I'm a little bit concerned about too is that this might also be based on developers saying they maybe have, like how many 2-bedroom unrented units are we talking about? Like, I don't imagine that there's this huge swath of unrented 2-bedroom units in Winooski.
Yeah, it's
Like it's maybe they don't have maximum capacity, like that they're hoping for.
Yeah, it's like for once ever they have like a couple of units in a building that aren't rented, right? Which is like maybe actually the sign of like a healthier market, like.
I will say that developer in a new building has significantly reduced rents because they're struggling to rent the higher priced market rate units that are larger.
That sounds good.
I would,
Right.
oh yeah, but yeah, I mean, it's showing that is not necessarily a niche in the market that is heavily desired, at least in Winooski. That might not be the case other places. But yeah, I just think we need to be very careful, because I agree with what you're saying. Like, it would be amazing if we could design everything and have like a beautiful futuristic city and ask for everything in the world and have developers build it for us and, have everyone be thriving. And of course, that's everyone's dreams. But I think that we need to be realistic about market conditions.
I understand that. I don't think 2-bedroom units are that unrealistic though. And if we're talking about we're not even saying mandating, we're talking about putting back what was lost. Like, that doesn't seem that big of an ask.
Yeah, it's just, I think it's hard with the 300 Main example. Like, that genuinely would impact that property's future. Like, that property could end up just abandoned for, we don't want to create situations like that by over-regulating where
Can you talk us through that? That's a helpful example.
Yes, it is helpful.
Yeah. I mean, 24 2-bedroom units, or pay, if it was left at 100,000, that's $2.4 million,
So
Or
this is
$1.2 million.
300 Main,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So it had 24 2-bedroom units?
Yes, and that is more, I think people kind of think of that more as like 3-bedroom units or specifically family style housing. And I've been in them. It's because they're townhome style. And so they kind of have a lot of square footage for a 2-bedroom. People are usually surprised that they're 2-bedroom because there are many people in the units. Or there were.
Yeah.
There's no one in them now. But anyways, that would be, 24 2-bedroom units, or paying an obscene amount of money.
Yeah.
Um,
And again,
what are they
it's
proposing on that site, just so we understand sort of what the market
What was
is?
proposed is their permit, they never even met the conditions, but it was 1-bedrooms, there was some 2-bedrooms, there was 3 3-bedrooms that were affordable. And that was not because of any incentives, that was, I think,
Their concession.
I think
for-
that was a concession
Yeah.
due to social issues that had previously happened. But like mandating that a developer develop 24 two-bedroom units, that's not essentially CHT or some other public interest developer would, like, that project will not pencil out.
Yeah,
Okay.
and
Well, 'cause
the,
sorry, just
Yeah.
I'll let you go.
yeah,
Our point, like, wasn't that property significantly occupied by new American families?
Yeah.
Like, so we would get more housing, but effectively displace people who would be occupying that new building, like with that format of housing.
Yes, but like I said, those were kind of, that was an interesting development
I
style.
interrupted you, please.
Yeah.
That will not probably be replicated, because they're gonna be developing like, 60-plus unit
Yeah.
building. Those are townhomes that had like nooks, and a lot of people had fashioned kind of like a bedroom at the bottom area.
yeah.
There was multiple bedroom, the 2 bedrooms upstairs. It was like a design that was great for them. There was a little yard, there was like a play area. It's a real shame, because like the property design was really like amazing for families. So like it's very unfortunate that it's now completely empty. But I would say those are not like the traditional 2-bedroom units that are going to be rebuilt in its
Yeah.
place.
Yeah,
Understood.
I just mainly wanted to reframe the conversation a little bit, because the data is showing us that it's not, based on like a cursory read of it, it's not showing us a loss in the 2-bedroom units. It's just showing a slower rate in that development. So I think that, just to reframe the conversation a bit, we're not witnessing a loss in 2 bedrooms overall from the data, but we're seeing a slowdown in that.
Okay.
So I think that like I mentioned before, that there's certain right sizing in order to make sure that we are fulfilling a community need, and also providing to the market, and providing to the market something that can actually be rented out is what's critical here. So again, like it's not necessarily a loss in terms of numbers. It's a slowdown.
And we're trying to correct.
When
a
you say
market.
slow down, you're talking about in newly developed units.
Yes.
And we're trying to correct a market flaw with this 3-plus bedroom where they're not naturally developing in the market. So like, how do we get this family size housing in the market to be able to accommodate the population? And while market rate development wouldn't naturally occur, maybe because it's expensive, these buildings will be here for how many years? Hopefully like 100 years, right? So today's market rate 3-bedroom is, tomorrow's affordable 3-bedroom. So thinking about these buildings, not in this moment of time when we're like, we can make a ton of money off of studios and we'll fill them, but thinking about Winooski over its tenure and how long these buildings stay and what family size housing looks like, and like getting it now when they're developing it is crucial. Whether it starts out at market or not, it's like the 3-plus bedroom we know doesn't naturally happen, and
Right.
we know there's demand for it.
Right, because from my paradigm, 2-bedroom could be a small family, whereas like the 1-bedroom and,
Will never be
and studio
in studio.
apartment is largely, a great deal of that is post-student housing
Right.
or current student housing. Like,
Yeah, or young professionals who
Yes.
move on and settle somewhere else
so
because there's no housing
for
to buy.
for instance, like UVM could like take on a massive building project and like, put on a lot more on-campus housing, and then we have just so many studio and single, but not like the 2-bedroom that would foster like families.
Yeah, community.
Yes, and we have had a tremendous lull in development in Winooski. Like, essentially, nothing has been built since I
Yeah.
started working here, coming on 2 years ago. And the 2 that are in progress have received significant subsidy. Like the Winooski Falls project, that is an anomaly because of the amount of investment that has come from, the entire city process, the hotel project, the parking lot. VHFA has invested a tremendous amount of money in that project. And then, the project on East Allen is kind of also a different project. There have been several other projects that have either applied for permits, didn't meet the conditions of the permit, that have been indicated as like a bellwether for how the development industry is going, specifically in Winooski, that have just completely gone MIA or stopped, mostly due to financial constraints. So
And a lot
that
of
is
that's
my
interest rates. has a lot to do with it.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
like that is a reality that we have to acknowledge. I just don't think it is the time to add any sort of additional restriction other than what we think is essential to work towards our priority housing groups. Just because if we try too hard to make it so perfect that we regulate everything and then nothing gets built, then that's, doesn't help us at the end of the day.
I think something that would get us closer is not having so many ways to get out of the 3+ bedroom, but having, depending on how many 3+ bedroom units they're tearing down, having a certain percentage of them be affordable, or again, the overlay district, making sure it's encompassing the 3+ bedrooms, instead of saying, okay, if you do this, you can do 2, or you can pay this to get out. Originally, when we were talking about, at least what I recollect, when we were talking about payment in lieu, we were really talking about 2 things, like one, potential uses that are coming into play that the community really wants. Like, that's where the conversation started. It was like, well, what if they tear down, a 3-bedroom home and build a grocery store? Like, are we going to force them to put 3 bedrooms back? Or are we okay with the grocery store? And so I see that now we have a section in here that's sort of like, you can get out of this if you're building a type of building that we've recognized as a need, right? So that's like where the conversation started. But now we have and we also talked about limiting that to the gateway district. Like, the payment in lieu could happen in the gateway district, but couldn't happen out of the gateway. But what's being proposed now is sort of like payment in lieu happens anywhere across the board for any reason. So I feel like that's been expanded, and now we have 3 other things in here that allow you to get out of building 3+ bedroom homes. So I feel like it's really diluting the original intention and filling that market gap.
Yeah, I don't see the affordable housing as a get out, right? Because for many it's taking on a burden, and that they're not going to be able to cover that cost unless they offset it somehow. So with the affordable housing replacement units it's definitely not a get out. It's definitely something that's equivalent or maybe even more than what a replacement of a 3+ bedroom would be at the market rate.
But it's not a 3+ bedroom
Yeah,
affordable, which is what we know we need.
Yeah, so I think based on our conversations, I took that out. So I think it seems like the general consensus is that if it's going to be a 3+ bedroom that's going to be taken out, then we should match with council's priorities and make it a 3+ bedroom that's affordable. That's one conclusion that I've kind of corrected already.
Okay.
So, but yeah, I definitely don't see that as a get out.
No, that wouldn't be a get out, what you just said, but that's not what's reflected here.
Yeah.
So,
Go ahead,
so
Jim.
on that note,
I've spoken of.
G2 gives an out for reducing the 3 bedrooms, and I don't want to discuss that so much. The wording of that number 2 to me doesn't make sense, but maybe it's just me.
What are you talking about, Mike?
G2?
G2, if you read the word and then you read the comment, I have a hard time putting the 2 together. So the wording in G2 doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah,
Compared to what the comment is saying.
Yeah, the comment needs to be adjusted now based on our conversations that we've been having for the last 20 minutes, that 2-bedroom allowance would not be included in the next iteration of this draft. So it would have to be a 3+ bedroom unit that would be replaced, but we could offset that by counting the 3+ bedrooms as 2 replacement bedroom counts. So
Or just say a 50% reduction.
a 50% reduction. Yeah, I think that would be simpler. Thanks.
I was saying it that way, and you said 50% reduction was better, and then now we
Yeah.
I think at a high level, what you two are telling us is like there really isn't that much of a need for market rate 3+ bedroom units to the extent that we need housing in the city for like larger families. That housing probably also really needs to be affordable, right? So
On the market rate rental side.
Yeah, or on the rental side. at
Yes.
least.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
But
And-
this covers everything, yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
and so that, I think I like, this should make, like, that should be the target, right? Like, that we're making sure we're keeping, to the maximum extent possible, large units that are also, like, affordable too,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what's being torn down,
Right.
right? Like these old homes that
Right.
are deteriorating on the gateway that
Yeah.
they're tearing down and putting up
Yeah.
these fancy new
Yeah,
places.
to the
You're
extent,
losing.
yeah, to the extent that there are large units that are affordable, it's because it's like old
Old.
and not in good
Yes.
condition.
Decrepit.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, because if you think of
Yeah.
the south, I'm not good at my directions, south side of East Allen,
South side of East Allen.
opposite of Winooski Road.
Oh, yeah. That is the south
I
side.
think it's south side of East Allen where that project, is it still permanent? The big project on East Allen?
Oh, that's.
But if you think about
that's
the
years ago,
buildings that
yeah.
are there, they're like the old Victorian homes that have been all chopped up. I live in a big, like, former mansion that has been chopped up into apartments. And a lot of those are like more affordable, larger units, that would get demolished and replaced with. Of course, like the sheer gain in housing is a positive, so it's not always, all negative, but
Double-edged
it's
sword.
definitely like a different type of housing.
And-
So-
I haven't followed the permitting process, but what's getting built at 113 East Allen?
111, so across from the beverage warehouse.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So that's 22 units, studios and 1 bedrooms.
But 80% AMI, so affordable.
So I guess maybe what I am taking away from this is, like, maybe it is that, like, at least to some extent, if you have an existing large development with a lot of 2 bedrooms, maybe, like, kind of what it is replaced with is studios and 1s, and then some
Some
affordable
3 bedrooms.
3-plussers.
Yep.
Right?
How do you do that?
Yeah.
And
that's
in the market rate, studio and 1s kind of cover that,
and
right?
my discomfort is if
Like-
there was never a 3-bedroom unit there, you not only won't get the 3-bedroom unit, but you will have lost whatever 2 bedrooms were.
Well, but I guess the regulation could be written such that, okay, right now you have 24 2-bedroom units at, say, was it 300? I don't see why it couldn't be written in a way that it's like, we're replacing the total number of bedrooms in such a way that we're requiring basically a certain number of 3+ bedroom affordable units, and that, but you can replace it with more small units. I'm just talking like a very
Are
high
you
level.
are you saying like a hypothetical, like say, I don't know, you were losing like more than 3 2-bedroom units, if you replaced like that with 1 3-bedroom, that would be an adequate like inclusionary zoning ordinance.
Maybe if it's 3 bedrooms plus an affordable, devil's in the details.
I just think we can't regulate every single like scenario that, yes,
Yeah.
that sucks to lose those units, but I think it's overkill. And
Yeah.
I think going from not regulating it at all to regulating everything is going to be, I think that would be a mistake.
Yeah, you're talking about more than, what is it at, like probably a quarter of our housing stock, which is 2+ bedroom, and we have over 1,000 2+ bedroom units based on a rough count.
It's only a
1,200,
quarter of the stock that's 2+?
Yeah, out of
1,200, but
1,200
public
out of
buildings
38, yeah.
is 24% of public building units is
Yeah.
2 bedrooms.
yeah,
I'm going
it's
to
a
interject here for a second because it's 7:45. I just want to keep track of our timing because we do have a couple other agenda items. And I do agree with what Jasmine and Revi are saying in terms of too much regulation, because we got to remember that there is a market that dictates all this stuff. And I think as much as we might want to guide that market, we don't really have control over market forces. So I think we have to be aware of that.
Mike, I've heard that loud and clear throughout this meeting, but I'm
Yeah.
only talking about what has been lost.
No, I understand, Jim, but I'm just saying, I've heard a lot of things, I just want to keep that
Sure.
point, that's all.
And I guess I'm kind of dwelling on this because this seems to be the first time we've hashed this aspect out at this meeting. So,
Right, and we're gonna be talking about it more, so.
okay.
Like I've said before, you know, I hope everyone feels comfortable in stating their opinions and putting it on the table, and having an open mind to discuss these topics and come to a consensus agreement with the commission. And I hear dead silence. That's okay. Anyway, can we wrap this section up right now and this agenda item and move on to the next, or am I jumping ahead of myself here?
So this has to go to the developer roundtable. We'll take out the two, and this will be the version.
I guess so, yeah. So we'll make adjustments based on these conversations for now and present these to the developers on Tuesday. Namely being what's on the screen right now, which is removing G1 and then adjusting G2 so that it's 50% of, so it's double, or whatever you said.
I would just say, make it clearer.
Yes. Yeah. We'll make it really clear. And then we'll adjust 4.1 accordingly to apply to 3 plus bedrooms.
Okay.
And Mike,
So do you want to talk, do we have time to go into the TDM, or is that going to be a long discussion?
It's gonna be pretty brief, I think. We'll see where the board goes.
Okay. Well, let's give it 10 minutes and see what happens.
Okay. Do you want to, actually, I'll defer to you on the ordering of items, but anyways, I'll talk about TDM. So TDM, one of my favorite subjects. So I've had some conversations with stakeholders about how to adjust these regulations accordingly. So one of the main concerns that I've received is about monitoring and evaluation, and how are we going to ensure that there are trip reductions over time, and what those trip reductions actually mean. So there's language in here about what each point means in terms of trip reduction. So we're talking about like a 2% trip reduction for each point for the strategies, and with an overall intention of aiming towards like a 10% trip reduction for the smaller projects, and up to a 14% trip reduction for larger projects. This is very much in line with South Burlington's. I think the Tier 1 is more ambitious than them, but the Tier 3 is right in line with their TDM regulations. The points have been adjusted a bit, I think, since we last talked, just to make it more in line with best practices. And I was mainly looking at VTrans's guidance, and also having talked to CATMA and other stakeholders about making the right equivalency between the points and the trip reductions. So I think the big thing on here that is really different, I think, is this backstop that we talked about with parking. I've done a bit of research on parking, and I'm still in the process of doing my on-street parking calculations. I've developed a formula and getting a lot of numbers out, and you can see the tables probably during our next meeting. But one thing that has jumped out at me was some of the research about parking reform and removing parking minimums. That's not something that I'm advocating here for today right now, but looking at that research at the larger cities, even though these larger cities have removed parking requirements, parking is still being included at a much lower rate, but still being included by developers, understanding that we do live in a car-oriented culture and in a very much car-oriented built environment. And I was thinking, what about this at a more local level? So I was taking a look at major developments in South Burlington for the last 2 years since they've initiated parking reforms. And they've initiated 4 parking reforms over 4 different periods for the last 13 years. Their major one came in 2019 with removing parking requirements altogether for commercial developments, and then last year they removed parking requirements for residential developments of one for single unit and 2 unit dwellings, and then for multi-unit residential developments, they've reduced it significantly below the statutory limit. So looking at theirs, and I can show you that table for their major developments, what they're seeing is on average a 22% difference between the required amount of parking from their 2018 LD land development regulations and what is being proposed and what has been proposed for the last 2 years. So the overall number is actually much more comparable than one would expect.
Right.
It's not, developers aren't altogether removing parking altogether when those parking minimums have been removed, because there is a demand for cars and parking at developments. What it does provide is flexibility. So in their developments, there are some developments that do have more than what those 2018 land development regulations require on those sites, and some that require them significantly less depending on the context and the location. So it allows for certain amounts of flexibility by developers to include so many parking spaces depending on whether there is transit nearby, or whether it is walkable or not, or whether it is much more farther away in one of their industrial districts that's completely disconnected from transit and from the larger road network or not. So that's why I removed the backstop here. I don't, based on the research that I've done, I don't see the need for the backstop, especially considering the context that we are in right now.
So if I understand what you just said correctly, essentially developers in South Burlington are still essentially voluntarily building 78% of the amount of parking that they were required to in 2018.
Yeah, I think it's much easier if I just show you the table that I've drawn up. I only managed to finish this earlier today, so that's why I haven't included it in the packet. And I mainly looked at developments that were new developments, no amendments, larger scale, no house sites. So I came up with this list of like about 14 developments that have been proposed in front of the DRB, specifically DRB. Some of these are in their city center district, which did not have parking requirements at all. And I just compared those to the 2018 land development regulations to see what would be the regulations, what would be the required amount if they were subject to those regulations versus now. Some of the 3 highlighted developments, in those projects, there are parking requirements in there for their multi-unit dwelling projects. So in those, for each unit within an apartment building, they have to include 0.75 parking spaces. But even so, you can see that difference overall, and overall, it comes out to be comparable. Certain ones, the margin is much bigger than others, of course, but it depends on the context.
The 2 things that I'll note, the places that effectively, like especially in our size, effectively are able to remove parking minimums are places that have already set up a system for regulating on-street parking. So it's not a free-for-all. Like I think Somerville is always like a good example to draw from locally that got rid of parking minimums. But before that, they had regulated their on-street parking. So you either had parking permits as a resident, or you had metered, park mobile parking as a visitor, so that the developer couldn't just offload their parking requirements onto the street. But not to say that they couldn't get a number of parking permits for the street, right? But systems were in place for that. And then the other piece I'm always beating the drum on is if you really don't want people to drive, which I think we're all kind of saying, like moving towards a future where people aren't driving means providing real alternatives to driving. And we don't have that currently. We don't have a robust busing system. We can't really walk to many places because we don't, like employment specifically, that would preclude somebody from having a car. There's not great density of employment here in Winooski, so really biking is the most flexible and feasible alternative to driving, and we don't have any bike infrastructure. So before we turn our streets over to car storage, I'm always like very sensitive to the fact, like, can we get bike infrastructure on it, or can we incorporate parking in a way that still allows bike infrastructure so that we're not putting ourselves in a place where we cannot turn away from the car in the future because now it's parked vehicles, which is kind of what Burlington has really struggled with tackling when putting in infrastructure. So those are my two things when we're talking about just like unlimited or removing parking regulations is let's get our streets regulated properly and let's get them designed the way that we want them to, and then you can get rid of parking regulations because you're not worried about.
Like I said, I'm not here to talk about removing parking altogether, but I think that it does. What I'm trying to say is we don't need to worry about putting in that backstop for that parking reduction. I think that talking about removing parking altogether is a whole other conversation that we can have at another time, but I'm mainly speaking about that backstop, and I don't think that based off of what the research shows and our data, we don't need to include that backstop.
But potentially, if we don't have a backstop, they could get rid of all of their parking.
Not necessarily. So the backstop is only for if they include like EV charging, priority housing projects, underground parking, trying to list off all the things, and then TDM to a certain extent, and then also possibly inclusionary zoning only for the inclusionary units right now in the current framework. So altogether, it's still it's not going to be a full reduction. I think the maximum is probably going to end up being at around like I think the most I've probably seen is like up to half. But I think that it's only going to be it's going to be very much context specific.
Yeah, so I think that's worthy of like probably a more robust discussion.
Yeah.
At another meeting.
Okay. That was our 9 minutes. Can we move on and talk about the letter to GMT?
$7.58.
Hopefully it's an easy one though.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk
This
about
one looked easy.
the letter?
Doesn't seem stressful.
Yeah.
Seriously.
I'm sorry, I can't hear the discussion by the panel.
Sorry, we were just saying I think this will be an easy one. We're hoping it's an easy one to sort of get through quickly. Mike, did you want to
Talking about
introduce
the
it or?
GMT letter?
I didn't hear that.
Mike, did you want to introduce this topic, or do you want me to go through what I've drafted up so far?
No, go ahead, since I just saw it today, so.
Okay. This is what I drafted. Open to edits, suggestions, comments. The impetus for this is that GMT is looking for letters of support before they go to the legislature for that larger discussion about supporting and funding transit. Of course, transit is vital for our community, and I definitely want to see more transit in our community. So they're reaching out to not only planning commissioners and planning commissions, they're also going to be reaching out to city councils and city councilors too for letters of support. So this is the letter that I've drafted for your review. Any questions, comments, suggestions, edits? Happy to do it. And at the end, I included a signature line for Mike.
I thought it was fine. I thought maybe the last paragraph of the sentence that starts, Winooski is in full support.
Mm-hmm.
That I think that first sentence is fine. We look forward to partnering with GMT in the coming years to connect community members between communities throughout the state and to support each other. I think maybe we need to tweak that a little bit, and I'm thinking, I mean, we want connection within the county and also the commuter routes, but I think it's more important. Someone's going to correct me, I'm sure, but I think it's more important we talk about a dynamic system within Chittenden County to connect, as we look from Winooski's standpoint, connect our citizens to jobs and shopping and whatever. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think this says it just in kind of a broader context, and maybe you want like a little bit narrower of a focus. Is that?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you know, we want to support GMT, but I'm thinking from the city standpoint, we want to concentrate on our community and surrounding communities as opposed to the whole state.
Yeah, so something that we look forward to partnering with GMT to ensure the members, the residents of Winooski are served by transit, something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Right.
And I think it's important to stress, for connection to employment, schools, and shopping, or whatever it might be.
Grocery stores.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it's like,
Yeah.
make it sound a little more selfish, like Winooski
Yeah, we
needs
want-
this.
We need to be able to
You
get to
know,
Shaw's.
yeah.
Right.
And jobs.
Yeah, I don't know what the ridership in Winooski is, but I think it's pretty high as compared to other communities.
I
Christine,
would,
you have
yeah, I
any
would think
idea?
Winooski of all communities probably.
Yeah.
And I guess maybe that's what like this.
Yeah.
I have what you were saying is lovely. I have no problem with it, but I think he's maybe saying like a little bit more,
Self-interest.
a little
in
more
here.
like pressing urgency to it, and like
Mm-hmm.
I think what he's saying is the specific needs that GMT actually does provide. Is that?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, the number
Yeah.
2 is like the highest used route, and the number 9 I think is the 4 in their system.
Yeah. So, the number 2 running on East Allen is like one of the highest frequency routes by GMT, and it's still considered moderate frequency in like transit standards. But
Exactly.
It's still,
Yeah.
For
Like,
Vermont.
Still underserving
Yeah.
us.
it's still it's not like a bus every like 5 minutes, but it's still for the Vermont context, it is high frequency.
Is that like on 15 or 20 minute headways? You know?
Yeah, it's
20-minute headways.
yeah, I think it's
It
20
used to
minute.
be 15.
Yeah, 20-minute headways.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what a lot of, just for context, what a lot of other communities have done, Mike, and you might have saw that on the email thread, is write this letter of support and then
Yep.
follow up with like actual recommendations for how the routes could serve the community better. So actually rethinking the routes on the ground and requesting different routes. And in some cases, we were included on the South Burlington one, so sort of saw what they had reimagined their route going through South Burlington. But maybe that's maybe that's a down the road type thing that that Winooski can work on. Because I feel like the lack of grocery stores and the lack of access to grocery stores and the really unsafe walking and biking option to get to our closest grocery store could be an area where expanding transit or Winooski making a specific request to expand a line or move a line may make a lot of sense. But it's probably a bigger community conversation to get at this.
I think you're right. I think this letter they're going to use going to the legislature, maybe more general.
Well, Ravi has said here in that second paragraph, and he's calling it a vital link. You know, he is making that case, I think, and he's listing doctor's appointments, groceries, errands. You are pointing to some concrete.
Yeah, it's more of, do you want me to put this at the end to put that nail
I
into
think a
it?
reiteration of that. My thought was a reiteration of that at the end.
Okay.
We're not currently serving as a vital link to grocery stores, but we hope in the future we'll serve as a vital link.
Okay.
I think so.
Okay. Other than those changes, I think.
I would just also, Rebbe, I would just say, put my formal first name.
Okay.
I mean, for this letter, I think that makes more sense.
Okay. What is your formal first name? Is it Michael?
Yeah, don't ask me how to spell it.
You're not secretly J. William going as
No, I'm
Mike?
not secretly J. Williams. I'm Emmett.
Had to ask.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for writing that,
I mean, I usually sign my formal things Michael R.
Okay. See? That's why I had to ask.
That's right.
Overall, I think it's very well composed.
Thanks.
Yeah, I thought so too.
Okay. Then I'm going to make these edits and just, can I just pass it on to Mike to sign? And is that okay?
Yeah, why don't, make the edits, send it to me, and then I'll sign it, but we can send it to everyone so they can see too.
Okay.
Nothing hidden here.
Okay. Up to you if you want to make a motion or a vote on it, just because it says as approved on this day. So,
I think if people are good with that, just a consensus is fine.
okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. So, city updates. Madam Mayor. I hope that's not offensive.
No, not to me. The last city council meeting, part of it was our joint annual meeting with the school board. So we shared our adopted priorities with them. They shared work that they have done to establish metrics to measure their end statement, and included presenting state test score data to us, which showed improvement in almost all areas and grades in the Winooski School District. Scores still below average, but a higher rate of improvement than the rest of the state, essentially, which they attributed to the investments made through COVID relief ESSER funding and carried through in the latest budget, making some significant improvement in academic outcomes for students here. We also reviewed a draft priorities list to send to state legislators for advocacy on areas where we need state help. So those include a focus on housing, public safety, climate action, and education funding equity. And the Green Mountain Transit funding piece is included in there. I worked on some language with the executive director at GMT. I also wanted to, relevant to the last discussion, he came to council recently, and we did talk about the potential for line extension up to Shaw's Costco area, which he is supportive of, and it's on his radar to explore at whatever point in the future they are positioned to look at route changes. And then the other update, we adopted changes from the Housing Commission to the Home Improvement Program portion of the Housing Trust Fund. So that is loans and grant funding for low to moderate income folks to support rehabilitation of Winooski housing related to minimum housing code violations, energy efficiency, and ADA accessibility. So this is a program intended to support housing quality in Winooski. Usage had dropped off the past couple of years, so the commission, the changes they made were to tweak it for more accessibility. It's an old program from even before my time that got rolled into the Housing Trust Fund. It used to be accessed, and then changes made a couple of years ago made it harder to gain access to for folks in Winooski, so sort of addressing that.
Is pot maybe a factor in that, like unawareness of this service that is provided by the Housing Trust? Is that?
No, Jasmine's still there, she could speak to it. There's actually been people who tried to apply or were interested in applying but couldn't qualify because of various barriers.
Yeah, it had an owner occupancy requirement, and then an owner income requirement. The owner had to be moderate to low income, which already for, an investment property owner is going to be a very small population of people, even smaller population of people who are also owner occupied. And then there was also a tenant income requirement that the tenants couldn't be over 80% AMI and couldn't pay more than 30% of their income. It was only a loan at market rate. And most banks offer like there's a pretty standard home improvement loan like option at most lending institutions. So ours really wasn't differentiated at all, and then also had affordability requirements. So we removed much of that and are trying to do a more coordinated effort with our code enforcement team, because I have like received referrals from them previously, but the owners either A, weren't interested in just like a market rate loan, which is fair, and B, like didn't meet the eligibility requirements. A few of those owners who were like very low income and had like 50 code violations. So we discussed it and we were like, if we can't help this kind of property, then like why, the program isn't functioning correctly. So thank you to council for passing those changes.
All right. If there's any other questions, happy to take them, but those are all my updates for tonight.
Thanks, Christine.
Thank you.
I don't see Ruth here, so I guess we're just gonna go to staff. Reve and Jasmine, if you have any updates?
Trying to think. We have the developer we have a developer roundtable on Tuesday, of course. DRB meeting on Thursday. It's just one application that's going to be reviewed by the DRB on Thursday for an ADU associated with a duplex.
Christine will email you tomorrow about the roundtable.
Other than that, I've finished biking every single street in Winooski. It's just a matter of tabulating all the on-street parking that we have, just to see like how much is there for car storage, and I think figuring out like that whole balance of on-street parking, off-street parking, housing units, and how we could better manage our public resources.
You probably really only do that here and in St. George.
For Jens, maybe.
I think I could do it in most communities.
Well, you could, maybe.
Yeah. It's just a matter of getting out there on my bike, but.
Okay, thanks, Reve. Jasmine, anything you wanted to update us on, or you good?
No.
Okay.
Thank you, though.
Any other business?
I have a couple questions. Did the Joint Commission meeting get noticed yet? Like, is there posted? Are we under the same? Is the Planning Commission meetings, they have to be posted a week in advance, right?
2 days.
2 days in advance.
Yeah,
When are we gonna post the joint meeting?
tomorrow.
Okay, which is Friday.
We had to wait until this language was solidified before we wanted to include it.
Yeah.
And then I think this is the right time to ask maybe, in the last meeting that you guys talked about the armory, like potentially being able, the city playing a role in the armory project. Where does that stand?
I can send you the, was it a memo? Yeah, it was a memo from us to council, maybe last month?
Yeah.
Feels like a long time.
Yeah, it does.
Basically scoping the potential armory project. So to kind of summarize that, and then I can send it to you, that's fairly, very detailed. The National Guard's decommissioning the armory, as everyone is aware. They still haven't demolished it yet, but Christine reached out to them, it's probably like 7 months ago now, and kind of asked if there was the possibility for the city to receive right of first refusal, if the National Guard would be open to doing a private sale to the city rather than putting it on the open market, which their board did vote and indicate that they approved. Obviously, there's like a lot of steps between now and then. They have to demolish the building and finish completely environmentally remediating the property before they can legally sell it. But since that is an opportunity for the city, but the city doesn't want to manage properties, nor do we develop, we have decided that we would RFP even though there are very few development partners who would probably be able to do this sort of project, but it is kind of just best practice for a city to do that. I'm working on the RFP, and so kind of the scope that council has approved, which has been informed by city housing priorities, the master plan, comprehensive plan, housing commission, work plan, planning commission work plan, the working communities challenge group, is that we're looking at potentially like 50-50 shared equity, and then large bedroom count rental units. So like we will probably be hoping for like a couple of like maybe a 5-unit, like a 5-bedroom, like a couple 4-bedroom. It's really potentially like an opportunity for us to ask exactly what our housing priorities are. And yeah, it was decided that we wanted to pursue both of our housing priorities since this is such a rare opportunity. So looking at kind of like the butternut model for half of those units, and then like large scale rental units for half. I know that I can't be specific because we're RFPing it. Housing providers have found success too in transitioning people in their rental units to shared equity units as well, which I spoke with someone about that today actually. But looking at, since it's residential, probably going to be those like more cottage court, townhome style development. There can be up to what, 53 units.
Yeah.
It'll probably be less than that because we want bigger units, and then the shared equity units generally will, I think the butternut ones are at least 3 bedrooms. So I would imagine that they would do that, or we would ask for that as well for this project. But yeah, hoping to get that RFP out. We're doing it on the early side because it's better to have a development partner early in the process rather than later in the process, so that, you know, funding stacking will need to be sorted out, and it's only going to get harder in the coming years. So yeah, potentially very exciting opportunity that council signaled their support on a couple months ago. But
So it does sound like the city gets to shape it in a way that favors priority housing a little bit more.
yes, completely.
As long as they agree to.
Yes,
do it
and
in a
we're
show.
essentially, we're not gonna pay for, like, we're not using any of our like city funding, which is good because there is a potential we would have needed to have the community vote on it if we were going to incur debt. So it's really just like a transfer of property, but we're utilizing our like status as a municipality that we can ask specifically for what we need. And just based off of the fact that we're asking for an entirely affordable development, I don't think any for-profit developers would financially be able to, maybe we'll get some interesting bids, we'll see. But it's more than likely going to be a nonprofit housing developer, because just, for-profit can't make a profit on nonprofit.
But it does look likely, this plan looks likely.
Yeah, gosh, I hope so.
Fingers crossed.
It needs to get
Sounds
demolished and remediated, which unfortunately takes longer than anyone ever wants. And
Don't
then,
worry, all those regulations are going away.
Yeah. And then, that's true. And then, yeah.
Sorry, Jasmine or Christine, I thought that discussion, I think at the council, was there was going to be some community or neighborhood input into thoughts of how it was going to be developed.
So, well, you can speak if you want. I was just going to say the input that council suggested was that and I can just respond and send out the memo because it lists all of the information sources that the scope of the project was kind of built from. But council did indicate that those groups and documents, reports, data were sufficient in dictating the scope of the RFP and the project generally, but that there would be room for community engagement a little bit further down the line for like the makeup of the project, what it looks like, some of like the external components, like how it fits into the neighborhood, things like that, kind of all like what they're doing with the O'Brien, for example. like that was determined by council, but there is like community input and there has been at different various stages. So that was, yes, whatever Christina's saying too.
So,
The memo, she put a link to the memo.
Oh, great, thank you.
Yeah.
so it sounds like there will be an opportunity for community members, especially neighbors up here, to have some input.
Yeah, I mean, I
Yes.
think there has to be anyways, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's, right now, in the current regulations, it would have to go through DRB review anyways, but I'm pretty sure there was some sort of built-in, like, community meeting process involved. So,
It's very, very early stages.
yeah, so,
We're looking at
something that
years.
we're gonna look at down the line in a
But-
year or two.
No, understood.
possibly.
I was listening, I think, to a council, I think it was a council meeting, and that was kind of the discussion was making sure that the community neighbors and whatnot had a chance to weigh in.
And still nothing from the Barlow redevelopment?
No.
Oh, are you talking about the
St.
church?
Stephen's,
St. Stephen's?
yeah.
Oh,
okay.
yeah.
No.
No.
My understanding is correct. They're doing things to bring the rectory up to code as far as like dwelling unit.
Being able to put people in it?
Yeah, and I heard rumor that it might potentially be leased as a Ronald McDonald house, but I don't know if that's true or not. Can't verify it.
I have no information, because there are no permits in my box, so,
Well, I think we met with the owner and I don't think there was any sort of firm.
yeah.
There's still very open to, yeah.
Yeah.
I think ideally the city would love to see like senior housing developed there. But
Did they pump out
unfortunately, we
the
don't have the
church?
leverage we do for the armory situation. So.
Yeah. Do you know if they've
Well-
pumped out the church basement? Do you know about that?
There's limitations on that too, per zoning.
Yeah.
I heard that letting it sit
Mhm.
would make that building.
Yeah,
unable
in terms of
to-
scale and the church, yeah.
I was wondering if they dealt with that.
Okay, anything else on our other business, or if not, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn at 8:23.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
I
Good night, thanks, everyone. Thanks,
Thanks,
Christine,
Mike.
thanks, Bianca, thanks,
Sorry,
Brenda.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No.